What's going on? We're back here today with another fantasy football week 6 ranking video. Today we're going to be talking about the wide receivers in PPR leagues as well as a little bit of standard leagues, just to touch on it. Before we get into the video, please do leave a like, comment, subscribe, especially if this video helped you out. So moving into the wide receivers, I have Cooper Kupp number 1. I think he is the undoubted number 1 wide receiver for now. Stephon Diggs could give him some trouble. Justin Jefferson as well has shown he can have a monster game. Other players like Amon-Ra St. Brown has been pretty decent. However, I don't think he's at the level of Kupp, Diggs, and Jefferson just yet. Tyreek Hill could also pop off, but with the injuries to the Dolphins quarterbacks, I'm not sure what's going on with Hill or Waddle. Cooper Kupp against the Carolina Panthers averages 26 points a game, while the Panthers allow 32 points to wide receivers. The Rams offense has been very stagnant as of late, but Cooper Kupp has been the mainstay in their offense, really being relative no matter what's going on with the Rams. So he's a lock at number 1 for me. Stephon Diggs against the Chiefs, number 2 wide receiver on the year, averaging 24 points a game, while the Chiefs allowed 38.5 points to opposing wide receivers. Diggs had a huge game last week. Gabe Davis had an even bigger game last week. Buffalo really got it going offensively through the air, and that's probably what they're going to have to do against the Chiefs this week as well. Most teams rely on... These are some two high-powered offenses going against each other, and Josh Allen will most likely sling it just to really get ahead of Kansas City before Patrick Mahomes and the rest of them can come back. Justin Jefferson at number 3 against the Dolphins, 23 points a game, while the Dolphins allowed 36 points to wide receivers. Justin Jefferson had himself a huge game last week. Did most of his damage in the first half again, but he's a solid play regardless of who the matchup is, I think, at this point. And he may have some down weeks, but he'll have some monster weeks to really combat that. And I think he's a must-start player, obviously, but he's definitely a top 3 wide receiver. I think he's a top 6 player overall. I think he's better than... I think maybe the top 6 would be Kupp, Diggs, Jefferson, and then probably the 3 running backs in Saquon, Eckler, McCaffrey, and possibly Chubb. So he's definitely a top 7 player. At number 4, we have Jamar Chase against the Saints, 13th ranked wide receiver on the year, about 15 points a game, while the Saints give up 37 points to wide receivers. I also do have T. Higgins all the way down here at number 19, 25th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging about 16 points. And Tyler Boyd is also in the fray at number 39 at 10 points a game against the Saints. Jamar Chase has had a rough couple of weeks. Really hasn't been able to get anything going for him. Seen a lot of double teams, double coverages, really just getting taken out of some games at some times. However, T. Higgins has been doing okay. He already missed 1 game early on in the season. He may miss another one here with this injury. However, if he does not, he should be in prime role to do amazing this week, especially with a lot of the pressure headed toward Jamar Chase. T. Higgins can really pop off. If Higgins doesn't play, I would boost Tyler Boyd's value just a little bit higher here, maybe into the top 30, because I do think they are going to smother Jamar Chase. At number 5, I do have CeeDee Lamb here against the Eagles, 18th ranked wide receiver on the year, 14.9 points a game, and the Eagles allowed 34 points to wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb has shown a great connection with Cooper Rush, averaging about, I think he's in double-digit targets still for the year. Last week, he got 8 targets. However, Cooper Rush threw it like 16 times. So he got a whole 50% target share. So CeeDee Lamb's going to be a huge part of the offense, whether it's Cooper Rush or Dak Prescott. I give him the edge over A.J. Brown this week just because I think Dallas will be down and they will need to throw the ball a lot more. I have Michael Gallup here at number 46. 9.4 points a game. I do think he's overtaken Noah Brown at this point and will continue to rise up the rankings as he kind of gets accustomed to Cooper Rush. Although, be it for like maybe a week or two if Dak does start, I fully expect Dak to be the starting quarterback when he comes back. With Dak there, Noah Brown's connection with Cooper Rush is basically kind of gone. And I think Dak is really going to rely on CeeDee Lamb, Zeke, Tony Pollard, and Michael Gallup. Moving on to A.J. Brown against the Dallas Cowboys, 11th ranked wide receiver on the year, 15.5 points, while the Cowboys allowed 33.8 points. This is going to be a defensive battle here. Philly's offense is definitely better. Dallas's offense is actually surprisingly pretty good, but both defenses are really, really good. I do also have Devontae Smith here at number 28, averaging almost 14 points a game. A.J. Brown hasn't really gotten into the end zone in a couple of weeks now. I think he has 1 touchdown in the year, so that's really been holding him back. Philly has shown they're going to rely heavily on the run. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Goddard as well have shown they really can get work done through the air, really leading to those Philly rushing touchdowns. At number 7, we have Mike Evans against the Steelers. 21st ranked wide receiver on the year, 17.4 points a game, while the Steelers allow a whopping 48.7 points to wide receivers. Tom Brady's favorite red zone target. Mike Evans is in line for a huge game. And now that Godwin is also healthy, who I have at number 18, averaging about 10.6 points a game. And Russell Gage at number 50, averaging about 9.2 points a game. Julio Jones still a little questionable with his injuries, so I have him outside of my top 50. But Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both should be in line for a huge game. Leonard Fournette as well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 8, we have Tyreek Hill against the Vikings, 4th ranked wide receiver on the year, 20 points, about 21 point a game, while the Vikings give up about 32 points to wide receivers. And I have Jalen Waddle at number 16, 7th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging almost 17 points a game. Both Hill and Waddle really couldn't get it going last week. They were down to a 3rd string quarterback. Hill also got injured, so that's something to watch out for. I think he had about 7 catches, 47 yards, while Jalen Waddle only had 3 catches for 23 yards. So they were really ineffective last week. I don't expect that to be the case with Teddy Bridgewater. However, I'd watch out for Tyreek Hill injury news just in case he does miss this week. If he does, Jalen Waddle is in line to have a monster week, especially being basically the only wide receiver threat in Miami. At number 9, we have Marquise Brown against the Seahawks, 6th ranked wide receiver on the year, about 19.5 points a game, while the Seahawks give up about 30 points to wide receivers. Marquise Brown has been doing amazing so far in the year, really showing that he could be a true number 1 wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins is coming back next week though, and will take that number 1 wide receiver spot away from Brown, but he could be an amazing complementary piece next to DeAndre Hopkins, sort of like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, or Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, Tyreek Hill and Waddle. So they're going to be a huge 1-2 punch in Arizona, and they're definitely missing DeAndre Hopkins. The Arizona offense has been kind of struggling, and I really think DeAndre Hopkins is going to help them out a whole lot. At number 10, we have Michael Pittman against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 29th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging about 15 points a game, while the Jaguars give up about 29 points a game to wide receivers. Had a tough game last week against the Denver defense. Patrick Surtain was on him here and there, so Indiana couldn't establish their run game. Jonathan Taylor's been out. Nyheim Hines got injured. So hopefully they're all playing this week and Michael Pittman can get it going. Otherwise, if Taylor and Hines both miss this week, it might still be tough for Michael Pittman Jr. to get going. At number 11, we have DK Metcalf against the Cardinals, 19th ranked wide receiver, about 14.5 points a game, while the Cardinals allowed 30 points to wide receivers. Should be a big game for DK Metcalf. I have Tyler Lockett at number 17, 8th ranked wide receiver on the year, about 16.5 points a game. So both Lockett and DK Metcalf both have been pretty solid this year. Very surprising. We all thought Geno Smith would really hurt their value, but they've been doing good. The Seattle definitely had to throw a lot last week to try to come back in the game against the Saints. Unfortunately fell short, but it was great for fantasy owners. With Geno Smith at quarterback, I think Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are both definitely top 20 plays. Some weeks DK Metcalf should be about top 15-ish plays. At number 12, I have Deebo Samuel against the Falcons, 17th ranked wide receiver on the year so far, about 15 points. The Falcons do, however, allow 40 points to wide receivers, so this is a huge number. However, I do think San Francisco is just going to run the ball against Atlanta and just go up so much that they won't even have to throw it at all. Obviously, Deebo Samuel can take part in that, but in PPR leagues, his value takes a little bit of a hit because he does not really catch the ball ever so often. He has been a little bit disappointing, but really picking it up the last few weeks, so I do see good things to come for Deebo. I do also have Brandon Ayuk at number 36, averaging about 9.5 fantasy points a game. A nice complimentary piece to Deebo Samuel. I do think there's a chance Ayuk pops off, especially if Deebo Samuel gets covered heavily throughout the game. At number 13, we have Mike Williams against the Broncos. 9th ranked wide receiver on the year, 15.8 points a game, while the Broncos only allow 26 points to wide receivers. Still no word on Keenan Allen's injury yet. If he does return, I do expect Keenan Allen to be in the top 15 wide receiver rankings as well. But until then, Mike Williams is going to stay here. I do believe I have Joshua Palmer at 48 for now. Obviously, he's going to take a huge hit if Keenan Allen comes back. But that's more of a wait-and-see approach. Mike Williams has been pretty solid all throughout the year. But facing Denver, he's most likely going to get the Surtain treatment. So it might be a little tough for Mike Williams to get it going this week. At number 14, Christian Kirk against the Colts, 20th ranked wide receiver on the year, about 14.6 points a game, and the Colts allowed 25 points to wide receivers. Kirk had a pretty disappointing game last week, especially since they lost to Houston, to Jacksonville. I thought Jacksonville Jaguars were going to go off last game. Trevor Lawrence, Kirk, Zay Jones, Ingram, James Robinson. I thought they were all going to eat, but was definitely wrong on that department. I do have Zay Jones here at number 45, averaging about 11.6 points a game. He has missed time, so he should be back this week. If not, look for Christian Kirk to get featured much more often, as well as Evan Ingram. Kirk is really valuable in PPR leagues, definitely more so than standard leagues, and I believe against Indiana, he should be able to get it going. James Robinson and Travis Etienne have both been handling running back duties. They've been pretty solid, both of them together now. And really, the Jaguars should be kind of looking to avenge their loss against Houston last week. So they're really going to be looking to get going this week. Courtland Sutton at number 15 against the Chargers. 12th ranked wide receiver on the year. 15.4 points a game. While the Chargers allowed 37 points to wide receivers. I do have Jerry Jeudy at number 31. Averages about 9.9 points a game. He's been a little hit or miss in my opinion. He did have a decent game last time around, but Courtland Sutton is their go-to guy, but Russell Wilson is dealing with an injury to his throwing shoulder, so that's something to look out for. Obviously, if he doesn't play, that's a huge hit for Sutton and Jeudy. I mean, he's not even playing that great, but huge hit for Sutton and Jeudy. The run game already lost Javonte Williams, so the Denver's pretty bad offense might get even worse, so could be very problematic if you're a Courtland Sutton owner. We spoke about Jalen Waddle and Tyler Lockett and Godwin and Higgins, so we'll move on to Amari Cooper against the Patriots. 15th ranked wide receiver on the year, 15.1 points a game, while the Patriots give up about 32 points. Cooper has also been kind of hit or miss. I've seen him score less than 5 points twice, I believe, and more than 20 points twice, I believe. So pretty boom or bust, but pretty solid player. Will be the number one receiver for Cleveland. The run game is definitely what Cleveland wants to do, and when you have Chubb and Hunt, it's really hard to stray away from it. But eventually, when they do go through the air, they're going to be looking for Cooper or Njoku or Peoples-Jones. At number 21, we have Chris Olave of the Saints against the Bengals. 14th ranked wide receiver on the year, 15.2 points, while the Bengals allow about 28.5 points to wide receivers. Still no word on Mike Thomas if he's returning this week or not. Jarvis Landry also was a little banged up. Chris Olave also suffered a concussion, so that's something else to watch out. Kamara did pretty well, but with all the injuries to New Orleans, Mike Thomas, Kamara just returned, Jarvis Landry's a little beat up, Jameis Winston's out. They're starting Andy Dalton and using Taysom Hill really all over the place. So if Chris Olave does miss time, it is huge L for the Saints offense. But if he's there, he will most likely be the prime target. Gabe Davis popped off last week. I think he had 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, but like 180 yards or so. And against the Chiefs, Buffalo will likely throw the ball, and Gabe Davis could be in line to repeat a huge week just like last week. 28th ranked wide receiver on the year, 15 points a game, while the Chiefs allowed 39 points to wide receivers. Terry McLaurin at number 23 against the Bears, and Curtis Samuel at number 24 against the Bears. 31 and 16th ranked wide receivers respectively, while McLaurin averages about 12 and Curtis Samuel averages about 15 points a game, and the Bears give up about 28 points to wide receivers. Jahan Dotson likely will miss this week as well, giving a little boost to Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. I believe in PPR leagues, Terry McLaurin does get outweighed by Curtis Samuel just because of his presence in the slot. Terry McLaurin has kind of lost a lot of targets because of Curtis Samuel, because of Jahan Dotson and Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic being pretty decent pass catchers as well. Terry McLaurin is definitely the best receiver on the team and can really pop off any given week. However, Curtis Samuel has seemed to be more of the guy that Carson Wentz looks to. And then Jahan Dotson kind of became that guy in the red zone that Wentz looks for. So I'm very worried if I'm a McLaurin owner, but I'm still holding hope. At 25, I have Drake London against the 49ers, 27th ranked wide receiver on the year, averages about 12.5 fantasy points a game, while the 49ers give up about 29.5 points to wide receivers. The Falcons couldn't really get it going last week. Kyle Pitts was out. He should be back this week. However, he hasn't really been much of a threat. The Falcons are just really suffering from not having Cordarrelle Patterson. They did play Tampa Bay last week, so that's a really, really tough matchup, especially for Mariota. This week, they should have more of their pass catchers. I'm not sure how long Cordarrelle Patterson is out, but as long as he is out, could really affect the Falcons' offense. But Drake London should still be the number one target for Mariota. Jacoby Myers at number 26 against the Browns, 39th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging about 17.6 points a game. He's ranked so low because he did miss a game, but the Browns allow 32.5 points to wide receivers. Now, Jacoby Myers has been kind of the guy in New England as the season has progressed. I believe Devontae Parker had a week where he was the guy. Week in and week out, Jacoby Myers has been probably the best option for them. And I believe Brian Hoyer is still out, so they're still starting Zap next week against the Browns. So Zap will likely be down and likely have to throw the ball a lot, and this is where Jacoby Myers really can come in. Deontay Johnson at number 27 against the Buccaneers, 32nd ranked wide receiver, 11.6 points, while the Tampa Bay Buccaneers allow 32 points to wide receivers. I don't want any part of the Pittsburgh offense right now, whether it's Deontay, Pickens, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. The offense just looks very bad. And I know Kenny Pickett is starting. I was hoping the offense would look better. It has not, and I'm really not sure. Deontay Johnson might even fall out of the top 30, 35 next week with another bad performance. And unfortunately for him, he plays Tampa Bay, really good D, so could be another bad game for the Pittsburgh fantasy players. Devontae Smith we touched about, but let's talk about Adam Thielen against the Dolphins. 11.2 points, 33rd ranked wide receiver on the year. Thielen is definitely better suited for PPR formats just because of his ability to play out of the slot and get a lot of catches. However, it's been the Justin Jefferson show all year long, so unless Jefferson gets heavy coverage, Thielen most likely will not be able to pop off, but can still give you a respectable amount with about 11 points a game. Allen Lazard against the Jets, 34th ranked wide receiver, averaging about 13.7 points a game, while the Jets allow 31 points to wide receivers. I do also have Romeo Doubs at number 34, averaging about 10.9 points a game. And I believe I have Randall Cobb right out of my top 50. Now, Doubs and Lazard and Cobb all have been pretty good. They've been stepping it up over the past few weeks. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon haven't had to carry the load on their back, basically. I believe Allen Lazard has had a touchdown. Randall Cobb led the team in yards one week. And Romeo Doubs have kind of done a little bit of everything over the past few weeks. And I don't expect that to stop. I feel like, obviously, Green Bay is going to run their offense through Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But if Romeo Doubs, Allen Lazard really steps up, the offense could be worth a look in fantasy. We spoke about Jerry Jeudy, so let's move on to number 32, Garrett Wilson against the Packers, 26th ranked wide receiver on the year, 12.6 points a game. We also have Elijah Moore at number 35, 7.2 points a game. I feel like Elijah Moore has really been slacking on the year, and do expect him to really break out because he's so super talented, and he's been overshadowed by Garrett Wilson, but also by Corey Davis, who's been averaging 11.8 points a game. Now, the Jets have shown last week that they're committed to running the ball with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, but they do have amazing outside weapons in Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. Corey Davis has been not bad, and also Conklin. So the Jets can throw it. I feel like this is a super young team, really has a lot of future potential in Garrett Wilson, in Elijah Moore, in Breece Hall. Their defensive players are also young and good. So the Jets have a bright future. At number 33, Juju against the Bills, 50th ranked wide receiver, 9 points a game. Pretty terrified to start Juju against the Bills. I also have Scantling down here, 8.9 points a game. And that's all for the Kansas City wide receivers. Kansas City wide receivers really don't have a clear number one. They kind of taken flip-flop for that number one wide receiver role every week. It's usually Travis Kelce, but he only had like 20 yards last week, and I think Scantling led them throughout. Whenever you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, you're worth consideration as a roster spot at least. So Juju, Scantling, I believe are worthy of being rostered. Starting, however, is a little bit tough. Obviously, if you're dealing with bye weeks or injuries, you may have to start someone like Juju or Marquez. However, I'll be trying to move into the top 30 of wide receivers. We touched on Romeo, Elijah, Brandon. Let's move to Devin Duvernay of the Ravens against the Giants. 24th ranked wide receiver on the year, 13.2 points a game. And the Giants allowed 26.34 points a game to wide receivers. Now, Rashad Bateman was injured, missed last week, might miss this week as well. He wasn't on my list just because I don't expect him to play. Mark Andrews is definitely the biggest receiving threat in Baltimore, but Duvernay has shown that he can get touchdowns. He got a return touchdown, he got like 3 touchdowns off deep ball, 1-yard touchdowns. Like, he's been very versatile, showing that he's much more than a returner so far in the year. And if he could keep doing that, I think he led the team in targets like last week. No, the week before last week, he led the team in targets, and he did pretty well. So if Bateman doesn't play, I do expect Duvernay to be effective in the passing game. However, I have a cap on him just because of how the Ravens run the ball and how well Mark Andrews is playing. George Pickens, another Pittsburgh wide receiver, just completely staying away from this offense, averaging 8.4 points a game. Don't expect him to get much going against Tampa Bay. Spoke about Boyd, but let's move on to Darnell Mooney and DJ Moore, two very disappointing wide receivers so far in the year. Darnell Mooney, 77th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging 5.5 points. Washington does give about 41 points to wide receivers, so this is a chance for Mooney to kind of pop off and really get going. Same with DJ Moore against the Rams, for a 47th ranked wide receiver on the year, 9.3 points. So not as bad as Mooney, but he was kind of selected in 4th rounds, so a very high pick, and he's really not been producing. Really sitting on most people's bench at this point, just because there's no trust with him yet. And if Baker Mayfield does miss time, it could hurt his value even more. But the Rams do allow 42 points to wide receivers, so this is the game, if there was ever any, for DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney to really pop off. Moving on to Rondale Moore of the Cardinals against the Seahawks, about 8.4 points a game. He did miss a good amount of time, so he's ranked like outside of the top 100, but he's pretty decent so far. And the Seahawks average about 30 points to wide receivers. If they do focus on Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore could be a big option for Kyler Murray. The run game has been basically non-existent for the Cardinals, and they've been coming from behind every single week, so I don't expect that to stop, at least until DeAndre Hopkins comes back. So Rondale Moore could be a viable flex play this week. I believe we spoke about everybody but Alex Pierce and A-Rob. We'll start with Alex Pierce, 47th on my list against the Jaguars, 63rd wide receiver overall, 9.3 points. Matt Ryan really trusted him when he can't go to Michael Pittman. Pittman was heavily guarded last week, and Alex Pierce continuously got open and was the wide receiver one for him basically that week. He did lead the team in receiving yards, I believe targets as well, but Pittman was not too far behind. And Allen Robinson falling lower and lower on the rankings for me, 49th ranked wide receiver this week and 76th on the year, only averages 5.7 points a game. The Rams offense hasn't looked too good. Some can attribute to Allen Robinson, some can attribute to Van Jefferson missing time. Then there's also Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson not playing well. So there's a lot of things going on there. But let's take a look at some of the standard league scoring just to see some differences. I do know in standard leagues I have Deebo Samuel in the top 5 where the catches don't really matter. And Deebo Samuel is so versatile in the ways he can score, whether it's on the ground, through the air, and the 49ers use him basically everywhere. So he's very valuable in standard leagues. So is Mike Evans, who really gets a lot of touchdowns. Jamar Chase doesn't take a hit here because he hasn't been doing so well, really relying on his catches at this point. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Marquise Brown, and Pittman do take a little bit of a hit here. If Keenan Allen does play, he'd also take a hit. Jalen Waddle, if Tyreek Hill doesn't play, I don't think no matter what league is in, Jalen Waddle's in line for a huge week if Tyreek doesn't play. Gabe Davis gets a little bit of boost here just because he's not a heavy pass volume catcher, but definitely makes a lot of use of his yardage. Lockett and Metcalf as well. Metcalf, I think, gets a lot more touch than Lockett this year, so his PPR value is definitely higher. But Lockett in standard leagues has produced with the receptions given to him. Terry McLaurin with the slight edge over Curtis, well, a couple of spots over Curtis Samuel here. Curtis Samuel is definitely more effective in PPR formats. Olave also does benefit here. Godwin takes a huge hit, only averaging 5.2 points in standard leagues. However, dealing with a lot of injuries, missed like half a game twice so far in the year, and then missed a couple of games as well. So Godwin's just been off to a rough start with injuries, but should be in line to pick it up against Pittsburgh. Players like Alan Lazard, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Pickens, Deontay Johnson get a little bit of boost here. Pickens got a huge boost here because I don't see them targeting Pickens a lot, but when they do target him, I do expect it to be a deep ball play. So he could pull up a lot of yardage in just a short amount of routes, and that's where the value is in standard leagues. Duvernay as well, not a huge target monster, but has been getting a good share while Bateman is out, so he could continue his trend upwards. Devontae Smith, another guy that doesn't rely heavily on a huge target share, but makes a lot of work with what he's due. T. Higgins as well, but he is questionable, so something to watch out for. Amari Cooper probably takes a hit here. I think most of his value does come from getting a couple of catches from Brissett in the short check down stuff, slant routes, curl routes, so Cooper might take a hit here. London probably gets a boost actually. Hasn't really been, the Atlanta offense just hasn't been going last week, mostly due to Cordell Patterson being out, Kyle Pitts being out, Mariota not playing amazing. So hopefully this kind of is a nice bounce back game for Drake. Upset he plays the 49ers, so tough week for him. And I think overall that's pretty much it. Some players just dropping a spot or two or rising a spot or two. Let me know down below who do you guys think will be the number one wide receiver this week. But that's all for the video. Please do leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.